Hey everybody, my name is Jackson Pollard. In my presentation today, we're going to cover opportunity costs, price controls, and business decisions. The two articles that I picked, we will be going over in the following slides. As you can see here are the two articles that I chose. Number one, Biden knocks opportunity cost, which is an article from 2020. Article 2 is drug price controls mean fewer cures, and these are going to demonstrate the economic principles that we covered in class, which I'll go over in the later slides. So this first article we're going to talk about, Biden knocks opportunity costs, is going to relate the federal regulatory analysis to rising opportunity costs, which we'll get into later. But here's a screenshot and the publication date. So let's get into the brief summary of the first article. So the Office of Management of Budget, which is just the government's control of government spending, is revising its core cost benefit guidance for federal regulations for the first time in about 20 years. Now, let's not forget that this happened during 2020 when Biden was in office. Critics at the time argued the change effectively phases out opportunity costs by assuming little or no displaced private investment from new regulations, basically just limiting other people's entry into the market. The result of this is compliant costs are counted, but you lose the opportunity. It foregoes returns on R&D, hiring, expansions, and whatnot. So how does it relate to our class topics? Well, opportunity cost by definition is the value of next best alternative foregone, right? So if we were to put $1 million towards compliance, then we could be foregoing the opportunity to put $1 million towards R&D or something of that sorts. Cost benefit analysis and discounting. Well, how assumptions are displaced, investment and rates of return change whether a regulatory looks worth it. Regulatory policy is a real world example of trade-offs and scarcity in macro and micro contexts. So let's get into some additional evidence and data of this. Federal guidance assumed displaced private investment earns roughly 7% annually, consistent with long-run market returns. If regulators now assume virtually no displacement, official analysis will systematically undercount lost growth and productivity. And economic literature on opportunity cost stresses that ignoring these alternative uses of capital, biases, and decisions kind of moves us towards overregulation. And there's the quote, the article that I pulled, some of this extra evidence, just kind of seeing how this could be bad, or it could have been bad as it was back in 2024, the government spending. So what is my business prediction? It's funny because I'm speaking in past tense. But over time, the more and more stricter regulations will be approved because their costs appear lower on paper, increasing compliance burdens in sections like energy, tech, healthcare, whatever. Firms will respond by reallocating capital away from growth projects towards compliance, legal, and reporting functions, slowing innovation and productivity. But when evaluating regulations internally, companies should build their own cost benefit models that explicitly include opportunity cost and required rates of return rather than relying solely on government analysis, which is always a smart thing to do, right? Like, you need to always analyze how the business market might be moving away from. I mean, the government's also always going to be a little bit different, even though they trend in similar directions. So what's my critique of this decision? Well, from an economic perspective, downplaying opportunity costs always reduces transparency about real trade-offs and risks misallocating society's chance of scarce resources. Treating $1 million of compliance as just $1 million ignores the compounding value that same money could generate in high return investments. And stronger policy would keep opportunity cost central, improve how it is measured, and communicate uncertainty rather than assuming it's away. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next article, which we're going to talk about price ceilings and price floors. And this article, which is drug price controls means fewer cures, is going to kind of give us a good example of this topic that we talked about in class. So here's a brief summary of the article. So the IRA lets Medicare negotiate prices for a growing list of high-spend branded drugs, effectively capping prices via a maximum fair price. Basically just the government saying, well, a drug can't be over this price, because people need it and can't make it too expensive. But what's the negative side of that? Non-compliant manufacturers face taxes that can exceed 1,800 to 1,900% of the drug's daily revenue, making it unrealistic to actually listen to this. The article argues these price ceilings are already leading firms and contractors to cut back R&D, which could be negative for the market. So how does this relate to class topics? Well, as we learned from class, price ceilings are a legally imposed maximum price below the market clearing level, which tends to reduce the quantity supplied or distort incentives, and it just leads to them cutting corners. Absence of meaningful price floors, no guarantee of minimum revenue to support high-risk R&D, dynamic efficiency and innovation incentives, basically how today's pricing rules will shape tomorrow's drug pipeline and our health outlines in the future. So we need to be careful. We can't just, yes, it's a moneymaker for these systems and it can be abused, but on the flip side, if they're not allowed to make money, we're going to lose the ability to create future drugs that can help people in the long run. So what is some additional evidence and data on this? So academic analysis of the IRA shows Medicare cannot pay more than a specific discount from average private market prices and must negotiate an even lower maximum fair price. Policy research estimates that smaller price control regimes could reduce new drug introductions by roughly 1/3 over time and significantly cut R&D spending. Historical evidence: countries with stronger drug price controls tend to see fewer or slower launches of new medicines. That's kind of what I was talking about before. It's like if you take out, Business America, which is kind of being able to make money and profit off of these drugs, people aren't going to innovate them because they're not making money off them, which it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? I mean, you want these things to be affordable for people who need them, but you also want to develop new drugs to help future causes and diseases, and you're kind of fighting, the balance between the two. Business prediction and advice. So pharmaceutical firms will reallocate pipelines away from products with high Medicare exposure and towards niche and less regulated markets. Launch prices into private markets may raise as firms seek to recover more value before the Medicare ceiling binds. Drug companies should stress test portfolios under different ceiling scenarios, prioritize projects with robust value at lower regulated prices, and diversify revenue across market and product types. Critique of the decision. From a microeconomic standpoint, binding price ceilings improve affordability for current patients, kind of what we talked about, but they reduce supply and weaken long-run innovation incentives. Basically, what we've been talking about this whole slide. You got people who can't afford it, but you also have, if the companies aren't making money, we're not going to develop more drugs. So how do we please both parties? It's hard to decide. The policy appears to overweight short-run savings for Medicare and underweight the opportunity costs of foregone and delayed cures. More balanced designs, value-based contracts, and targeted subsidies or innovation-linked adjustments could address affordability while preventing R&D incentives. That is a very good solution. if it works. It sounds good on paper, but at the end of the day, it's really hard to please both parties, which is why price ceilings and floors are a very difficult economic concept, but at the same time, they may be necessary so that we can make certain things like necessity things affordable for those who may not be able to afford it otherwise. So why did I choose these two articles? Well, both articles from the Wall Street Journal opinion section, and those are my favorite articles to read because I think they really tackle ideas that sometimes there's not even a solution to, but it kind of brings up why it's an opinion, not a fact, which I enjoy those ones. And it directly connects to core course concepts. I mean, opportunity costs and price ceilings and floors. I think those are literally some of the most basic economic principles we've been learning since high school. But I still think they're so important. I mean, there's a reason they're big principles in economics because they can be difficult and they're really applicable to real world situations. Together, they show abstract theory, trade-offs, incentives, market distortions, play out high-stakes real-world policy decisions like I just talked about in business strategy and innovation. They also clear opportunities to make concrete business predictions and critiques, exactly the type of applied reasoning expected in the business/economic course. In closing, I just kind of wanted to ask those questions, right? Like, how should businesses respond when policy underprices their opportunity cost? I mean, it's a real world question. And what are price ceilings justified despite innovation trade-offs? I mean, how can we balance these ideas and make it mutual for both parties without eliminating, growth in both areas?